Okay, I'm connected and I'm gonna make you the host. But you're not here yet, right? No. Okay, I just see myself, Concord host. Oh, there we go. Now you're here. I'm gonna make you the host. And then I'm gonna duck out so that I'm not gonna be on your mic. Okay. Here you go.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming today. Thanks for showing up to our webinar going over API. It's going to be a really exciting webinar. We are right at 11. We're right at our start time. We're going to wait a few minutes to get going. We're going to wait a few minutes, let other people join in. But everybody, thanks for coming. Thanks for coming and attending, contributing. What I'm going to do is turn it on the chat now, and I want to bring your attention to both the chat and the Q&A. Depending on what side of the bed you woke up on, you can enter some information in there. But actually, while we're waiting, I would love to have your engagement. If you're familiar with these webinars, if you come, then you know that we encourage engagement. That I'll answer your questions as they come in. We'll answer your questions later if we can't do them right then and there. But the Q&A in the chat is available for you guys to ask your questions. We're going to have a very specific format today, but to make sure the chat's working, could you guys go there and let's see, if you're going on any summer vacations, put it in the chat. Let me know in the chat. Let me know where you're going for summer vacations. If you're going more than one place, please only put one because I will get really jealous. We got a staycation and that's awesome. I'm excited for you. Going nice staycation. Haven't decided yet. That's encouraging that you at least have the chance. I will also be having a staycation. Getting ready to have a child, first one, so we're excited. Singapore, while going far. Mackinac Island, don't know about it. Dang, y'all going some cool places, I hope. And these are awesome. This exciting to hear that you guys are going some cool places. I hope. Thank you. I hope you guys are going to enjoy yourselves both on your vacation and during this webinar. We're excited that you guys are participating with us and doing this. We're excited. Thanks again for attending today's API webinar. We're going to get started just another minute or so. I'm glad the chat's working. Please feel free to keep using it. Also, we have the Q&A, depending on just, like I said, what you like. We'll be monitoring both for your questions. The topic today, as I keep saying, is the API. It will be something that is tough to kind of demonstrate, right? The API is something that is really exciting that some of you are probably already paying for. And if you're not paying for it, it allows you to do some really awesome automations and things. And so what I'm going to do, it's a lot of hypothetical. I'm not going to actually be able to show you Concord and show you what to do. Instead, I'm going to have a slide deck, and we even have a guest. One of our engineering managers, Alex, is going to be on the call and is going to jump in if I say things incorrectly, but is also going to be able to answer maybe some technical questions if you have them. And with that being said, if you have questions, I do want to keep encouraging you, like I keep saying, drop them in the Q&A or drop them in the chat, but we may not be able to answer them right away, or I may not be able to answer them right away, because the API is something that's very technical. And so there is a Q&A section at the end that we can make sure to cover things. So without further ado, I'm going to get started. We're going to be talking about the API today. So what is an API, right? It stands for Application Programming Interface. Also, maybe actually before I jump in, we're going to be talking about API and webhooks. But anyway, Application Programming Interface is what it stands for, but it's basically a way for different software programs to communicate with each other. So with like Concord and your internal systems, right? It allows them to talk to each other. And what we're actually going to use, a metaphor that I'm going to use. There's going to be a couple, so I hope you stay with me. But one thing to differentiate API and webhooks, for example, like API is making calls, right? API is making calls. And so if I go to this convenient little diagram that we made here, the way that the API works, for example, is you have your external system. You have your external system. Also, actually, before I keep going, whenever I'm talking about the API, we're talking about automations. This is the value that implementing the API gets you, building in automations to make it so that you either don't have to leave Concord or you don't have to leave your external system, or so that you're just doing your day-to-day life and these things are happening in the background for you, making your life more convenient, making your contract systems better. All right. So going back to this idea of like the API making calls, your external system, right? Your external system will communicate with Concord through the API and say, hey, I need this contract. What that will do automatically then will, for example, pull contract, maybe NDA Acme, for example, and then take it from Concord and send it back to your external system. So we're trying to work on these automations for you, and what the API is able to do again is to take a request from your external system and pull a contract from that, for example, from Concord into your external system. I hope I'm making sense. We're going to have time to clarify, and you can ask your technical questions later. Let's talk about who has access to Concord's API, and that's everybody that's on the enterprise plan. If the API is available on on the enterprise plan, if this is something that you're interested in and you're wondering, hey, I would love to learn more about the API, or I want to learn, is this possible before I upgrade, or even if I'm on the enterprise plan and I want to learn more about it, we're going to have a specific opportunity for you to sign up for time to meet with us. Let's keep going here. And I have some actual examples for you. So less hypothetical, more realistic. What can I do with Concord's API? So I kind of mentioned it earlier. I'm going to read this verbatim and then maybe even give some details. But you can create contracts with information pulled from a form or any other system, right? So a good example of this is like our Salesforce and our HubSpot are actually using this system. But let's maybe give like a Google Forms example. Maybe you create a Google Forms survey or quiz, and you say that people need to ask, like you have to put this drop down, you have to fill out this field, you have to fill out this field. When somebody fills out that Google form, for example, it will then make a call to Concord, and a contract will be generated, possibly with that information that you created, and then send it to you. Another example I have here is that we'll use information extracted in Concord to populate to a database, right? So your external system will communicate and make a call to Concord, and then it will populate in a database. So some cool things. And I have a note here. It's actually going to pop up in some of our slides, but I want to highlight, and we'll talk more about like what the support that we provide on. But the idea here is that we give you the keys. Your team builds the house. I hope that's a good metaphor. But basically, we will give you tools in order to create it and access to Concord's API information, but ultimately it's something that you have to build and you have to make the connections for because they're your external systems. And so we want you to be able to do that and make those. I also use the example of like we're kind of like IKEA, except I believe that our things to build are easier depending on maybe your temperament. But we give you the instructions, we give you the materials, but you're building it, right? But it's in a convenient platform. Let's move from the API, which is making calls, and let's talk about webhooks. Excuse me. Webhooks, instead of making calls, they're more listening. Webhooks are always listening. So instead of your system, like there it says API call or calling the API, you give us an address to which Concord will constantly send events. So let's go to the diagram here. And notice there's only one arrow. There's only one arrow going from Concord through webhooks directly into your external system. So, and there's some events associated with this. These are actually a trigger happens. There's an A and a B. Like a trigger happens, and then an event is triggered. So, I have this shown here. This is actually what it looks like from the platform when you start your like webhook journey. When you start to create webhooks, you might be familiar with Concord and how it looks, and so this is directly from Concord. I do want to highlight though, if you're looking to create some webhooks or use the API, it will require some dev knowledge, either from your IT team or someone internal. Maybe it's you. But the idea here that I really want to highlight is that these events on the left-hand side, I don't know if you can see my cursor moving around, but we have 4 events that trigger actions, right? So if a document is fully approved, if a document is fully signed, if a document expires, or if a signature is provided. And so a really basic but valuable example of webhooks is if a document is fully signed, it will trigger a message in your Slack channel, right? Maybe you have a Slack channel for sales. If you want to know if your sales team is using Concord and they need to know when a sales agreement is signed, that's a great thing to celebrate. It's a great thing to keep track of. And so when a document is fully signed, you can have people notified, right? That's something that's always, we're always listening for those actions and those events, and we'll send them to your external systems. All righty, we're flying through it. All right, let's keep going. And let's talk about actually the support that Concord provides you in using an API. So one thing you may have heard before, actually, let me just read the answer first, is that we provide you really detailed documentation. We've actually had really great feedback from our customers on our API. It's something that I'm proud to provide and say that we have it for customers, partially because of my knowledge on it and the CSMs, right? We're not the experts, but we rely on people like Alex to help us. But so many people that ask and start on the API journey, they don't even need our help because our documentation is so great. But I do want to say here, after that hyphen, is that we do provide specialized support for your software development team. What that looks like is we'll get you started. And so I'll have a link to kind of kick off that process. But basically what that or specialized support looks like is if you want to get started on this journey, want to start building some automations, want to really get the value out of Concord, we'll set up a call with your CSM, maybe with your IT team or some dev teams on your side, and also some of our engineering managers on Concord. You can ask us your questions and we can say, yeah, here's maybe how we would do it. But I want to talk about what's there at the bottom is that due to the nature of the APIs, we have very limited troubleshooting abilities. Also, it's stuff that can be really robust in what it can do. Therefore, it can require a lot of time. And so we don't have the capacity to build things for you, but we are here to help. So don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions. All right. I hope it's making sense. We're going to have some time for Q&A a little bit later, actually right now. So while you're thinking of questions, while you're thinking of things, I also want you to start thinking about like, what are the external systems that I use in my day-to-day life? Are there systems that you guys have? And I might call on you to go in the chat, but I want to save the chat and the Q&A for the specific questions. Do you guys have questions for Alex? Do you have questions for Alex that you need on like maybe what can it do? Give me more information on this. Throw them into the chat, throw them into the Q&A. He's generous. He's in France, and so it's 6 p.m. there, so he's being generous with his time. Do you guys have any questions for Alex regarding the API or webhooks? All right, Alex, we have one. I'll read it to you. I was going to ask for the more common scenarios of API use. Do you have any for them?
The one Blake gave at the very beginning is one we've seen a couple times, so it's not necessarily a Google form, but it is some sort of web page where people would fill in information, and this and when they would like submit, this would indeed generate the full contract, invite the needed people to sign. This was like a very common use case because it gave their target their external parties actually the just to fill in the fields. Okay, now you go sign and we're done. That's really a common scenario. The second one, I mean, that's actually those we discussed about the one where people would actually fetch data from Concord to fill in their databases. It's not necessarily a database. Sometimes it's just for having reporting. But this is a classic one that comes up often. Actually, and so maybe we can't debug everything, but we see those calls. We see it when it's an API calling us. We know it's an API. It doesn't talk the same way.
Yep.
Yeah, those are really mostly classic. Then you can go to we have a very, very advanced client, advanced in the Concord sense of the way, where they have a very, very thorough way of tagging documents. I don't know if you all use the tags in Concord, but they do. Well, when I look at their document, what they shared with me, and I saw, okay, I know which teams are, I know which sub teams, I know which division, etc. It's very organized. And they told me actually that was fully generated by their system. So actually, the tagging was done outside of Concord and pushed on the document.
Yeah, I love it. I think it highlights the automation message, right? The idea with the automations is that's the great thing about the API. Now we have a technical question.
Yes,
This might
yes,
end up
very
going
technical.
that I think with this one, we'll make a note to reach out to you and see if we can help you there. But with the technical question, we might end up taking that offline. But yeah, unless that's something, Alec, I assume we should take offline.
Well, we can. Let's see if other questions. I can
Okay.
still like
Yeah.
look around, but
Sure.
rather we usually need more information than just the 400 errors. 400 means you have something is wrong in the request. We can help with that.
Awesome. Okay. So we'll either get to it later or we'll get to it offline, but we're happy to help. Does anybody else have any questions for us? Let's give it another couple seconds, but I do have a question for you guys. Agree. There are a lot of tags that we use for labeling agreements. Were you saying, Alex, that APIs can be tagged to contract types to alert teams?
Huh. Okay. So this was the other way around, where your system would tag the document according to some rules. Now, that being said, remember we talked about webhooks? And noted that for now we only have we have 4 events such that the contract is fully signed and so on. But well, you could imagine what you get some sort of automation rule. Thank you, Blade. Perfect. So if you imagine you have your document fully signed with the tag important. I'm going randomly here, sorry. This would be like you would get that event, and since it's important, you will want to notify specific people. This is something that could be a typical use case. Now, spoiler alert, we may be working on some sort of things, but future. When I use, I was going to ask, what events would you like from the webhooks? Because we only have the 4. So if you have like things like, oh, I'd want to know when this happens in Concord.
Yeah.
Again, when user changes to documents. So
Okay. So yeah, so this is a great example. And I want to highlight that again. If this is a great time, not just for your questions, but for your feedback. If you have triggers, events that you want in webhooks, I want to, underline what Alex said. Send them to us. So this one, it would be great to get a webhook when a user suggests changes to a document. Absolutely.
And is it a call to action? And you get it and said, okay, I need to go and apply or discard with the suggestion.
Okay, here's another one. We need an API call to get the approvals as they were given in the audit trail.
So I'll make I'm guessing that you're not. I'm guessing you're talking about on the signed contract then. We had a request for this. So at the moment, this was not a top priority, but we have 2 API calls that allow you to do it. You won't get it as beautifully as you expect for the signature thing, but you still have the whole approvals. Because from the signed contract you can get the original negotiation. On the negotiation you can get the approvals. This is in the documentation. We can take this offline, and we can send you we send you the 2 endpoints you need to get to there.
Yeah, awesome. Let's talk about how do you get these questions. Where do you ask these questions, or if you want to sign up? Let me just paste a link in the chat right now. if we've told you let's take this offline, or if this is something that you want to know more about, you want to sign up for that like specialized, support, that like kickoff call, go to the link and sign up for a meeting with us. So that'll get you in contact with your your CSM, your customer success manager, and some of our engineering managers. So if we've told you let's take it offline or follow up, if you don't mind going to that link, getting more, and and signing up for a meeting with us. Also, if you're interested in learning more, even if you have, hey, can I do this? Can I not? Follow the link. I think one of the coolest things, in my opinion, about the API is truly the amount of stuff that you can do, right? We gave some basic examples, but the API allows you to be really creative and allows you to make your life easier in a lot of different ways, right? So go to that link and sign up for time with us. I will also want to call out, if you know everything, if you don't have any questions and you're ready to get your process started, thanks for listening to this. We were told that we have a very extensive API. Kudos, we appreciate it. If you know enough and you're ready to get started, I want to tell you where you can find it. So you'll go to the automations tab and go to integrations. From there, you'll see Concord API and webhooks, right? You can extend it to see some keys, but this help documentation is where you can find that information. This is where you get started with the API if you know what you're doing, right? But then anyway, I want to call out, this is also where webhooks are as well. Anybody else have any questions for us regarding the API, regarding webhooks? Anything else? Maybe actually while people are thinking of questions, do you all have external systems? In both of those graphs, we talked there was Concord on the left and there were external systems on the right. What are some external systems that you all use that you wish were automated more with Concord or with your contracts process? This is an opportunity for everybody to get involved. If you have things, maybe you joined specifically trying to see if the API can connect a specific external system. What external systems do you guys use that you wish were more automated with Concord? We have Adobe Sign, right? I know I've heard Slack is one as well. I know people wish Slack. So I mentioned the webhooks connection, can be used to Slack. Anybody else have any external systems you guys wish would automate? Zendesk, it's another great one. I've heard Jira before as well. I've heard Jira maybe with making calls and things. I've heard that as one. I do know Jira has a Zapier connection as well.
Too.
But let us know the things that you think. Anybody else have any other questions about the API? And then as with all of these webinars, we talk about the topic at hand, and we always have leftovers. We have about 8 minutes, so I'm not seeing any more API questions, which I hope is a good sign. Again, go to that link if you have specific questions that you didn't want to ask in public, but also let's open the floor up to any Concord questions. I like to open up the time to, if you have any other Concord questions, feel free to ask those in the chat as well. And I want to remind you guys, my job is a customer success manager. We have an amazing CS team here with Concord that's available for you to ask questions too. So don't wait for the webinars to ask your questions. They're a great time to have like an open conversation, but you have access to us. So don't hesitate to reach out, support@concord.app, and we'd be happy to get in contact with you. So I have a question here. When a document is signed, why does it get a new UID? So I'm going to give my CSM answer, Alex, and then you let me know maybe if you want to add context here. So one thing I'll say is when you're collaborating with a document, when you draft it, you're in the review stage and you're sending it to external parties, it's one file. It's one file that you're working on. If a external guest adds a comment, I see it as an internal user and vice versa. When a document is fully signed, it almost splits into two separate files. where an internal copy and an external copy. And so once it's in that split signed stage and it's split into an internal copy and an external copy, if I add an attachment or if I add comments, only the internal people will see on this one. And the same goes for them on the external copy, where if they leave comments, that's awesome. I love the balloons. When they leave comments or when they add attachments, it's separate. So I, at least, that's as far as I understand it. Alex, you can maybe share if there's a technical reason, but I definitely know that when a document is fully signed, it splits into 2 copies. Is there any other context there, Alex, that you have?
You pretty much said it. It's as many copies as there are parties or like organizations on the document, and that's basically so that you each have your copy and you may, because once you've finished, once you've signed, you have your contract, but you're gonna want to handle it differently probably. Set up your reminder somehow, maybe have put on your own like fields, terms, stuff like that. You don't want to you want people like to cross this sort of information. So yes, that's why there's a new UID. But great answer, Dick.
Yeah, thank you. And great question. Thank you guys for staying engaged with us. Absolutely, we're happy to help. Anybody else have any questions for us? And also, I think I mentioned this in the other webinars. We're in an exciting season at Concord. We've always wanted to provide the best product. We've always wanted to improve it, but we specifically our North Star is providing value to you all, to creating features that directly add value to what you're paying for. And so your feedback is wanted as well. Reach out to us, support@concord.app if you have feedback. Include it here, we're recording it. And yeah, your questions as well. So anybody else have anything for us before we head out? Okay. Thanks again for attending. We're finishing our advanced features webinar series, but that doesn't mean we're stopping. Next week at the same time, we'll have another webinar. We're going to be going over extracting data with Concord. So, they're talking about the summary panel, talking about having Concord as a repository, I think is worth it. You all, no matter what subscription you're on, you're getting unlimited documents. But really where you really start to get value beyond what you're paying for is when you're extracting that actionable data. And so we're going to talk about how do you extract it. Another one, we're talking about analyzing it. But even if you're on the standard or the essentials plans, you can start extracting data. And then there's even more value if you're on our pro or business plans. But thank you all for attending. We look forward to seeing you next week. Again, support@concord.app is the best way to get in contact with us. And then we also have the link if you guys have webinar or questions over the API. I'm going to paste it in the chat one more time. Go to this link, please sign up for us. We'd love to get to talk to you and tell you more. But thanks y'all for your time. Hope you guys have a great day. Thanks y'all. Take care.
Bye everyone. Thank you.